everybody. Welcome to the 1K Q&A. I'm joined by Mr. Fantasy Awash here, aka Mr. Worldwide, Mr. Jimmy Nuts, and Chris Bernavo, some of my booktube besties, and one of my real life besties, I suppose, because I married him. So, there's that.
Is the key word there.
Exactly. It's fine. How are you guys?
Good. I like the nickname Mr. Worldwide.
At least someone does.
I insert Pitbull into every video that Josh is a part of, and he hates it, which makes me like it even more, and therefore I will always do it.
So where does it come from, though? I mean, do you hate Pitbull?
No, I'm completely neutral on Pitbull and his lack of talent, but good marketing team. But
yeah,
I don't know where it comes from.
Well, he calls himself Mr. Worldwide, and we did this one live.
Yeah, he is in Pitbull, not me.
He is in Pitbull, not Josh. And when I said Mr. Fantasy Awash, I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like Pitbull saying Mr. Worldwide. And then I just started inserting it into all of our videos. So yeah,
I love it.
Hi, Derry. Thank you. Thanks, Evie. And I am happy to have met you two, all these good people. Hello, Kale. Hey, Usman, good to see you. Dentist appointments are important, so that's always good. What are you guys reading? You reading anything good right now?
Chris, I'm going to let you answer this first.
I am reading a ARC book called drawing a blank here, but I'm also reading Shogun slowly.
Okay.
And
nice.
I'm reading Memories of Ice slowly as well too. Riven Earth is the arc I'm reading, and that is by you've seen him probably on, I think he's very out there on the booktube community, Zamar Akmar.
Yeah.
Yep. That is his debut
nice.
novel, and I think it comes out June 11th.
That's
so
cool.
Is it good?
Yeah. He's a pretty solid writer right off the bat. Very good prose and very good with description and all that. So I'm very impressed.
Nice.
What
awesome.
genre of fantasy are we dealing with?
It's probably, I would say, high fantasy, but it has a lot of very nature elemented magic in it. It's pretty cool how he describes how that works, and just his opening scene was phenomenal. So
nice.
Definitely I think worth a read for sure. I'm about halfway through, so
I feel pretty confident when someone is halfway through and they're like, it's good. I'm like, great.
yeah, I think it's very solid. Yeah, and the cover art is gorgeous. I love that artist, Andrew Mielski.
Is that the artist?
Yeah, he did some of Zach Argyle's cover, and I think the cover art for Gunmetal Gods as well too. So
neat.
What are you reading, Jimmy?
I'm reading a lot of stuff. I'm reading Witchwood Crown by Tad Williams, which is fantastic. It's very long, very methodical, but it's very good. And then I'm reading The Narrative and Life of Frederick Douglass as a nonfiction, and it's amazing, but very depressing.
Yeah.
Turns out slavery wasn't super cool. Pretty bad. Pretty bad. And actually
news, guys.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's one thing, obviously, we like learn about it and everything, but like to hear someone's firsthand accounts is like, oh, man. Yeah. Beautiful writing. Frederick Douglass is gorgeous in the way that he describes these things. Obviously, they're not. Some of it's gorgeous. He talks about like early Baltimore and Annapolis and how it compared to being on plantation and his idea of like what was big and with a lot of people. It's really good. I highly suggest reading it to folks who have any interest. Jared recommended it to me, so I figured to pick it up. It's like 100 pages. It's not super duper long. And I picked up his other 2 autobiographies as well. So I'm reading that. And then I'm also reading Stephen King's You Like It Darker, which is good so far. And then I'm reading Expanse Book 3.
So did you start it?
Yeah, The Expanse. Yeah, I ended up starting it. I'm just doing like 20 pages a day with my friend Garrick. So I think I'm like 80 pages in now, and it's good. It's really good. I think it's really impressive how Abraham and Franck, like their chapters are so interesting because like it's just scenes. He writes just like George does. He opens up in the middle of a scene, which is why it works for television. And when the scene is over, he cuts to another scene. And there's time that passes in between these two scenes, but like there is no fluff. Like there, like for instance, this one lady has a commute home from work. You do not get any of that. The next thing is the next most important conversation she has with her girlfriend, and it's like nope, right into that scene. So it keeps like the pace up really, really well without a ton of action because I mean there is action in the books, but obviously not that early. So them just jumping like to scene, it's very like television-esque and keeps the pace up. So I'm enjoying it so far.
That's good. And you can tell people what you're reading.
I'm reading Malice by John Gwynne. About a quarter of the way through. I'm very much enjoying it. However, I'm appreciating the fact that he's letting the story develop. He's not trying to rush you into it, which is a good thing because he is rushing the number of characters and places and things like that. So I'm having to take it pretty slowly just to keep all that straight. But I am enjoying the book a lot. So I'm happy that we're doing that for our first book on our
book
club, and I'm looking forward to reading more of John Gwynne afterwards because this is the first time I've read any of his work.
I haven't started it yet, and I have read no John Gwynne, so it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, Mouse is like his like probably roughest around the edges work, and like that is definitely a thing. Like he's like, I got all these characters and here they are. Figure it out, nerds. Like that's just kind of how it is. Like he's not very tactful in the way he introduces those things. But for me, I like the setup of it and like where it ends up going. I like that series quite a bit. Tad has a lot of characters too, and they have weird names, and I'm like, should I be writing these down?
That's why I had to stop the first one, the Dragon Bone Chair, which I really enjoyed, but I was like, I need to immersion read this just because I found that I was getting a little mixed up with all of the names. But Evie, to answer your question, I am going to be doing a book a month starting this month, which I also think Alan has finally agreed to. So I think we're good to go on that. Yeah, it only took harassing him for the last 7 months to get a response. But we got there in the end, so it's really exciting.
That's quick for Alan.
I know. We did a live not long ago, and you saw all of the unread messages in Discord, and I was one of them. And I looked at it, and I was like, I sent him that message 3 months ago. I then pinged him like 6 times and I was like, please clear these messages. Like, this isn't even relevant anymore. So, yeah, he then answered me, which is good, but it's good stuff. I am reading the 3rd book, Excalibur, of the Warlord Chronicles, and that series, guys.
Wow, you are breezing through that. That's
my God. It is so good. I thought when I read the first book, I was like, okay, this shit is way more intense than I anticipated it being because Joanna lulled me in with this GIF she sent me. And I was like, this is going to be a breezy Merlin. He's a chill dude. Dude is not chill, like the opposite of chill. That whole beginning is opposite of chill, but it's so good. So good. So yeah, a lot of strong feelings while reading that book.
How did you find the ending? Obviously, we don't want to spoil it for anyone. What did you think about the ending of Enemy of God?
A lot of feelings.
Banger.
Absolute
slammer.
So good. So good. The whole book
over decades for me, and I still remember it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite endings, actually.
Yeah, the whole book was phenomenal. I think, like, I've rated them both 5 stars just because they're both so good. But I do think Enemy of God was better because I struggled a little bit in the beginning of Winter King just because it felt so intense so quickly, which I mean, like, for setting and time period felt appropriate. Looking back on it, I was like, yeah, I get what he's going for here. But by the time you get into Enemy of God, you have a better understanding of the world, the characters, and the dynamics of what's happening. So I found I just appreciated the story that much more, but also he does so much with religion in these books that I absolutely love. So yeah, it's a phenomenal series. It's going to be one of my favorites ever. I've been raving about it to Josh for the last few days.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I think I'm with you. Enemy of God might be my favorite of the 3, to be honest. It's the one that I remember the most from.
Same. And just, I think maybe mostly from the ending, but
yeah,
it's definitely a reread I want to do. I don't do a lot of rereads rereads, but that one is definitely up on the list for sure.
Answer a few questions here. Bookborn. I was harassing her nonstop, and I thought, you know what? Rather than continuing to harass Bookborn, I should harass the whole internet. So I made a BookTube channel, and that's how it started.
Refresh us on your name, Fantasy Awash. Where that
originally, it was a podcast with Josh. It was Fantasy Awash with Laura and Josh, and we talked about the Rings of Power and House of the Dragon. And then we started doing Andor, and then Josh tapped out. And then it became a BookTube channel.
Andor, by the way.
Yeah, and Andor was great. I liked House of the Dragon, but Josh was kind of mid on it. So,
yeah.
Which I'm really excited because it's coming back out in like
10 days.
Yeah, 10 days. Yeah.
Pretty soon. Pretty soon.
Very, very excited.
Who inspired you guys, if anyone, to make a BookTube channel? Were you also harassing Bookborn?
I think it was just Daniel Green, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, he gets a lot of flack from people, I feel like, but like, I don't know, the dude did a lot for the space and definitely encouraged me. I think like him approaching it in such a maybe not modest way, but I felt like if he could do it, I could do it.
Sure.
This sounds insulting, but I don't mean it to be. Maybe a little bit, but like
I find it's approachable. The way he did it felt very approachable. It felt personal, like he was talking to you type thing, rather than it just feeling like someone you didn't know.
Yeah. Also, this was also like it was a time where I felt like he was really excited about stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like as an adult, I don't get excited about much. So
fair.
I was like, I wanted to kind of share that myself,
I get that. How about you, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody's lying that says that Daniel Green hasn't had some sort of influence on wanting to start a channel too. I agree with Jimmy. I think he gets more flack than he deserves because he puts out some quality videos, and he adds entertainment to it too. So they're fun to watch. But I think during the COVID season, obviously, when I'm sitting in office of one, not having anybody to talk to, I just turned on YouTube and then discovered BookTube, and it is a roller coaster. You discover Daniel Green, then you discover Murphy, then you discover all the larger channels, and then especially when I discovered Philip and Mike, because they're closer to my age, it's like, okay, so people my age are doing these videos too. So now I feel like I can maybe talk about books as well too. So
I have a question for you. Do you remember how you discovered BookTube?
Yeah.
It was through looking up the Wheel of Time comparison to show and book. And that's how we found Bookborn, because we watched the first few episodes of Wheel of Time and we're like, this is terrible. And I was like, I wonder if anyone's done a show to book comparison. And lo and behold, Bookborn's music came out of our TV, and that was the beginning of the BookTube journey. But yeah, and I was like, oh, she actually does this really well. And then I looked at Josh and I was like, I would be friends with that person. And lo and behold, 2 years later, now we're friends. So even though she's much nicer with her Wheel of Time comments than I have been about everything. So
did you watch season 2 or no?
Yeah, Chris and I did a live.
Also, you guys covered it. That's right. Yeah.
And Chris was also much nicer than I was, pretty much in every single episode.
I only watched the first 2.5 episodes of season 1, and I was like, I think I'm good. But I also like
the best episode, so there you go. You're fine.
We are doing a little good cop, bad cop, but it was getting hard to make some positive points towards the end.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. I'm not a fan of Westerns. The only Western, though, that I've read is Red Country. And I don't even know if I super consider that as a Western.
What about movies?
Well, if it's movies, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is very cliche to pick, but it's the best one.
It's not cliche if it is the best.
It is the best one. But do you guys like Westerns? Jimmy, I think you've read a few, right? Like you read.
Yeah, I've read quite a few. I mean, because a lot of what McCarthy does is in that air. But like, I feel like I need to read Lonesome Dove before I say that. But Blood Meridian's my favorite. I like it more than Butcher's Crossing. Yeah, Blood Meridian's pretty special to me.
How about you, Chris?
Just Lonesome Dove, and again, that was years ago with my dad. We wanted a break from. I used to read Stephen King with my dad a lot when I was younger, so we wanted to take a break from Stephen King, and we picked up Lonesome Dove. It was good from what I remember. I don't think I was really into westerns to really fully enjoy it. Maybe it's a book I need to explore more as a grown adult. You know, I was only in my late teens back then when I read it, so.
It's an ambitious read for
Yeah,
a teenager. I feel like
I fell asleep several times, and it was not anything against the book. I'm sure it would hold up amazingly now for me, but back then I was just like, let's get back to Stephen King, Dad.
Can you remember the last book that made you fall asleep? You were just so bored, like not really fall asleep, but you were just like, I can't deal with this anymore, and you got rid of it? Or did you power through it even just to finish it and get it out of the way?
I don't remember the last time I fell asleep reading a book. It's been a long time. I don't read before bed anymore. That's the big thing.
I wake up from reading. I have a hard time reading before bed because I'm that person that gets really excited and I'll read until 3 a.m, and then I pay dearly for it the next day.
Those do happen. Those are the best. Those are special.
Yeah, I had that twice last year. First was with Words of Radiance because I just was so excited and I couldn't put it down.
The length of that book is such that like pretty much any state of being you will likely be at some point during the course of that, because that is a giant book. I was so excited and could not put it down. And then the other one was Rhythm of War because I was really close to finishing it and I stayed up till midnight to finish it on New Year's Eve, just so it would count as part of my yearly total. I was like, I'm so close. And then, of course, was depressed that I had no more Stormlight Archives.
Only a few more months.
A few more months. I'm actually debating.
And then 10 years.
I know. Then 10 years, like no pressure, guys. But I've been debating rereading them again already this year so I can prep for the 5th one. But I feel it's still fresh enough. So I don't know. We'll see.
Sanderson will remind you everything you need to know.
Exactly. I feel like he's really good at repeating the same 7 things over and over and over.
Yeah, he took that from Robert Jordan.
I'm about to say he fits. That's why he fits right in.
Oh my God. I was talking to someone about this recently, and I think it was when I read The Dragon Reborn, and I was saying, oh, this is why they chose Sanderson to finish this series. Like the 2 of them are the friggin' same, and it was big Sanderlanche and like all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, oh, okay, I get it now. No, not for me. Have you read Wheel of Time, Jimmy? Do you like Wheel of Time?
I read the first 5 books, and I've started the 6th one like 4 times and still haven't gotten the gall to get past the prologue. I don't really like Wheel of Time all that much. I like the first 3 books well enough, but 4 was super disappointing, and then I actively dislike 5. So
yeah, I haven't gotten there yet. It's been
I
a
feel
big
like
break.
The fact that there's like 3 books, people are like, these are pretty bad, and I'm like, I already feel like this is pretty bad. So what's the point of continuing?
Yeah, people really don't sell you with the just how bad the middle is. Like everyone tells you how bad the middle books are, and you're like, why are you trying to convince me to read this series where 6 books are awful according to you? It's just not appealing.
Yeah, and I mean, just conceptually, you have a few books developing the plot and the characters, and then you have a few books at the end where everything happens that, like, pacing and stuff could be an issue. But then in the middle, it's getting from the end of book 3 to the beginning of book 13. Like it's really like if nothing. It's sort of like Lord of the Rings, which I love, and Two Towers is my favorite movie. But if you skip Two Towers, you're not really missing much plot. Like,
Frodo and Sam are in the same spot at the end of that movie.
Somewhere Philip Chase just puked.
Right? I know he's so upset. Chris, I'm so sorry. I know that you love Wheel of Time. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, but you got to remember, keep in mind, that was like one of my gateway fantasies. So at the time, I thought it was the big stuff. And I see all the dated stuff in there now. And I can see why people don't like it, especially if they've read so much other fantasy out there. I like the traditional. I do like the tropes that Jordan has, the reluctant hero, the farm boy turn hero. I do like those old tropes, and I think I'm a softie for those things. But yeah, there's a lot of pacing issues for sure in the series, and I don't have any problem with people disliking Wheel of Time at all. I can totally understand, where people are coming from with that, but it's a series I grew up with, and now I can just move up, right, to better.
Yeah. Yeah. Be as cordial as you can be.
I was not a fan. Personally, I have read the series.
Did you finish it? I thought you DNF'd the
I
series.
DNF'd the last book, and then partway through, and then I picked it up just to see.
The third one or the sixth one? Because isn't it like there's like a
trilogy
or something?
The sort of, I guess it's the original three.
Yeah.
I was not a fan of the hero.
The character?
We'll call him the hero. Nor was I a fan of his writing, just because I feel like I'm a pretty well-read person. I had to look up words multiple times, and I feel that there were much easier words to use, but it was one of those that we're going to make sure that people know that, I know vocab. So I felt that was sometimes the prose was a little unnecessary.
That's where Erickson found the word ochre, and he used it in Malazan like a bazillion times. He got it from Donaldson, and yeah, I started the first book. It was a little rough for me. Not even the incident, the thing that always makes people upset. It was just once we got into like the fantasy section of it, it was just like really slow, and I wasn't in the mood for that. So I'm gonna try it again one day. I did have dinner with Stephen Donaldson. Super nice guy, super cool. And I feel like I need to try the Gap Cycle, because I hear that's probably going to be more up my alley. Yet still very demented from what I understand.
We need the background context as to how that dinner came about.
Well, I went to ICFA and I hung out with Steven Erickson, and Steven Erickson just kept going, "Hey guys, this is Jimmy. He used to be a pro wrestler." And I'd be like, "Hey," and then he'd be like, "Oh, that's interesting." And then I'd talk to them. I met a bunch of people down there, like Jenny Wirtz was there. And then other people I didn't even realize that were there, like Joe Hadelman was there from the Forever. He was there. I didn't even realize it at the time. But I went to Bonefish Grill with Erickson, Donaldson, Philip Chase, AP, and a couple other people. And yeah, he was super cool. We got cookies. It was great. Yeah.
Big fan of cookies. Can't be upset about that. I keep getting told that people are excited for me to read Malazan, because half of the group is adamant that I'm absolutely going to hate it, and then the other half is really excited because they think I'm going to like it. And I have no idea where
I don't know where you're going to fall, Laura. I
have no idea.
There's a big inspiration from Roman imperialism, so I think that you'll pick up on that stuff and really enjoy it. The historical stuff, and it's really great.
I was going to mention that's for us who like history and archaeology, Laura. I think that those aspects you'll enjoy. Yeah, for them. I'm not sure about character, but you did like Joe Abercrombie too. So
he is my favorite. Yeah, Caleb is one of the strongholders of I will hate it.
I don't know if you would like it.
I don't know if you'd like it overall.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. But I've been told I need to give it the first 2 books before I really make a decision, which is always interesting. Jimmy, I have no
Tony Atlas.
There you go.
I hate Tony Atlas. I hate that guy so much. I won't even go into all of it, but he's a horrible human being.
There you have it, guys. Yep. Fresh from Jimmy Nuts. Yeah, I just don't know where I'm going to fall on this series. Josh hasn't read it either, so I am curious to see where each of us ends up.
Very anti-typical fantasy where you get to sit with 4 characters for the whole book and get inside their heads. Like, that's very not what he's doing. I love it, but I get why
I don't need that. Like, I don't necessarily need that, because if that's not what you're going for, then that's fine. Like, if it's what you're going for and you don't achieve it, then it's problematic.
I will say I'm not binging Malazan. I usually take a month or 2 break.
Yeah. Maybe I love this for you.
I can't binge Malazan as much as
it doesn't sound like a bingeable series.
I did. I read it all in 7 months, alongside of Realm of the Elderlings and Dark Tower. I loved it. That's my hottest take about Malazan, is that I like every book. Like, people are like, oh, this book's like a 10, this one's a 1. I'm like, I loved every single piece of it. Like, never at once was I like, I hope this gets over soon so I can start something else. Never happened. But that's very rare.
Do you buy into that ideology where it's like a lot of people feel that they're not smart enough to read Malazan, where it's like you have to be at a certain level of reading fantasy before you can really venture into that world to appreciate what he's doing? Or you kind of
always say it's a good idea to start people with Malazan, because then they don't have any preconceived notions of what fantasy is supposed to be, because like people really like putting stuff in a box. So actually I think it's a great series to start people out on. It is written at a higher level than most books. Like genuinely, like a lot of books are written at like a 6th grade, 8th grade level. I do think this is written a little bit higher than that. And that's not to sound pretentious. I mean, I just think that that's the case. So it can be a little harder for people, but like certainly anyone that reads books regularly, I think could make its way. It's just a book, you know, like they're books. You just read them, man. Yeah. You don't understand everything, but you don't need to understand everything as it happens.
He read it, or she read it with a fever. So, you know, there's high hopes for the rest of us.
Maybe that was the key.
Yes, exactly. Just have to get, you know, COVID or the flu, and then you're solid. You'll have no problems.
Her H5N2's going around, so that'll be fun.
All kinds of fun stuff. Like, that's the thing. I know nothing about that series. And part of that is because when I started my booktube channel, I decided last year I went in blind to every single book that I read, which ended up being really fun, just because I was like, cool, I'm going to discover what I like and what I don't like. And now, because I avoided spoilers for everything and like descriptions of everything, I have no idea what Malazan is about, like, at all. So when I pick it up, I'm just going to be like, cool, let's see what happens here, and have no expectations.
Good. So, I think that's a great way of going into it.
Yeah, I've been having a good time going in blind. There's been a few books where I've been kind of taken aback, where like Winter King, where I have a very wrong opinion, but ended up being great. So
an Arthurian story that feels like it takes place in the chaos that was Wales after Rome, the vacuum that Rome left in the 6th century. It's like that it felt real with magic.
Yes, of course. With magic. That's the main thing. That's what's keeping me interested, guys, with magic. What was the last book everyone finished?
I had to look. Been reading Witchwood Crown for so long now.
Mine was Leather and Lark and Enemy of God. I finished them both, I think, on the same day. Enemy of God was great. Leather and Lark was less so, unfortunately, because the book 1 was so good, and I had really high hopes for book 2, but it was a bit of a letdown. So, yeah.
What about you, Josh?
Republic of Thieves, the most current book in the Gentleman Bastard sequence by Scott Lynch. I absolutely love that series, and I think he shot up my list of favorite authors. So yeah, that was a really, really enjoyable read, and really sad when I finished it.
That is an amazing take. I love to hear that.
He's a fun author. How about you, Chris?
For me, finished Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill.
What'd you think of it?
Jimmy has strong opinions on that series.
Tired of everyone loving this book, bro.
What?
I'm tired of everyone loving this book.
You're tired of everyone loving his book?
Yes.
Okay, so
come on, Chris.
This goes back to my love of traditional telling fantasy stories, where you start off with your farm boy. Laura, and I don't know, you're probably not gonna like Ryan Cahill. It does have a lot of Wheel and Time influence. I will say. I thought it did. I don't know if John and Philip agreed with me on that assessment, but I did feel like there was a little more Wheel of Time-esque elements to it. He even does have fades in him.
It literally, he named his enemy spades.
He has fades,
bro. Anyone says it's not Wheel of Time inspired is blind. There's
what?
That's nice to blind people.
But what I do appreciate is his approach. What I do appreciate with his first book was his bond to human with dragon. I think is done really well. And I like the aspect they have with each other, the a human that bonds with their dragon, and the complicated way they share a mind essentially together. And I thought he pulled that out really well. And I think he writes action really well too. So, but yeah, I don't know if it's going to be something for you, Laura. I don't know if you're not a fan of Wheel of Time.
I will give it a shot. I try most books, but we'll see. I go in with no preconceived idea unless it's Wheel of Time, and I'm like, no.
I recommend reading The Fall first, just to kind of give
I've
you.
heard a lot of people say that.
It's an all action sequence that happens, like 80 pages novella, and then maybe go into a Blood and Fire. I think it'll be a little bit better of an approach if you just do decide to start that.
Jimmy looks like he's about to implode.
All right, Jimmy, bring it on.
No, I'm the only person in the world that doesn't like this book.
I don't think you are.
I feel like I'm insane.
No, I don't think you are either, Jimmy.
I think it's trite. I like, I'm being honest. Everyone says that he really starts coming to his own in book 2. I respect that. I think it does happen a lot.
Yeah.
But I read the recap for book 1 because there's in the beginning. I said, nah, never mind, and I closed. like the recap of book 1 made me DNF book 2. That's insane.
It's so funny.
It's also not reasonable at all because I didn't read any of book 2. I just read the recap of book 1. So.
I mean, if you know you're not going to like it, though, I'm a firm believer of not wasting your time. So find a book that you might actually enjoy. Like you don't need to just read it.
There's so many people who love that, though. I mean, maybe I'm missing something.
Do you think it's solely his popularity, Jimmy, that people are just maybe a little more lenient on liking it?
I think people really like the genre of epic fantasy and like the stuff that Wheel of Time does do. Like, I think people like those things. And Ryan Cahill's doing it in a modern voice is how everyone describes it.
I'm so glad I didn't use that.
I'm glad you didn't either. But that I think there's a market for that. Ted Williams once said there's a certain amount of people who are going to buy books that have dragons in them, no matter what's in the book. Like, that's the genre fiction. Like, there are people who buy books that have swords and dragons on the front, and that is important because it continuously feeds the genre. Like, that's the baseline of the genre. And then you have stuff that bubbles up and makes it outside of the genre, maybe elevates it slightly. And I think of Blood and Fire is for that crowd, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not here for it, and I'm okay with like. Kind of like redundant stories. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, John Gwynne does a lot of stuff other people have done. I like the way he executed it quite a bit. And I don't think his writing is like phenomenal by any means, but like, I like the way he tells the story. And I just never got any of that charm at all out of Blood and Fire. And then whenever there was a chapter named The Unexpected Journey, I was like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this. How is that not a lawsuit? Like, I don't get it.
That's funny.
That's one of the
I think I would sum it up as it was a fun read. And because I am one of those people that likes, I never tire of dragons. I never tire of, like,
I do love dragons.
Old tropes that, are used for a reason why I fell into fantasy. But yeah, I mean, I can definitely, I was like, wow, these are really close to the point here on so many. The
Fade thing actually blew my mind.
The Fade thing, I was like, wow, you actually named them Fade.
Yeah, that was wild. But whatever. I'm glad people enjoy it. Then there's another series people can talk about and get behind.
Yep.
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, it's the old joke with George Martin is that when he was getting rejected for a while, he was pitching I must write a book about dragons fighting zombies, and no one wanted that. So then he wrote Song of Ice and Fire, so he can eventually get to dragons fighting zombies. Which,
I mean, now we all know that we love and enjoy. Evie, back to your earlier comment. We have put The Spirit Cuts Through Water in our list of potential books for our book club. So it's coming soon. We just don't know in which month.
As Caleb also said,
he's been harping on it hard as well. So, but yes, Euripides is excellent, and he's real bitter. So I greatly enjoy reading all of his plays. Highly, highly recommend Euripides. Yeah. I love dragons for the most part, but I do feel like we've kind of hit this point now where dragons just sell. And I can't tell if that's because of the hype of Game of Thrones that we got with the dragons initially. Like, I think it probably is, but we're now starting to see that kind of move into different subgenres of fantasy, whereas before I just felt like it was more epic fantasy, but now we're getting that a lot in romantasy. Like, it's a big thing for romantasy. They're like, here's hot people and dragons,
and they're hot dragons, literally.
I think dragons are just dope.
They are
Yeah.
like, it's fun, and you can always, like, you can't always, but we're starting to see different takes and relationships that people have as the rider with their dragon and all kinds of stuff. So I think it can be fun as long as it's executed properly. But I didn't read that series, so I can't comment on it.
I think that Dandelion Dynasty has a really cool take on dragon-esque type things. It's one of my favorite spins, actually.
I put that also on the list. We formulated our list last night of our book club potential reads. Some of them I have read. I think maybe I don't know if you've read
Expanse
any. Yeah, we put the number one for Expanse, which Josh has read and I haven't. And then we put on books that neither one of us has read in Dandelion Dynasty, book one.
Yeah, Dandelion is on my short list for this, at least to start this year. I know, make sure you reach out to Anitha, Laura, when you start that, because I think she was also interested in.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun. Jake is absolutely correct. The only disappointing thing about lions is the lack of literal lions. Jimmy just finished another GGK book and absolutely loved it. So
yeah, it was awesome. I ordered Brightness long ago. That's gonna be my next one, and it's staring at me. I'm like, man, I wasn't gonna read any more GGK this year because like I need to read more authors, but I might read it.
Brightness Long Ago is a great book, but for me, it was a step down from Lions, which is still great.
Yeah,
I think Lions is probably my second favorite book ever written. But the last paragraph of Brightness Long Ago was just I reread it about 10 times. Like, this is the best, like, literal and like closing few lines of a book I've ever read. And
yeah, I think he does endings just in general, like just endings very, very well.
Yes.
Which is awesome because that's a hard thing to do. But now I'm more curious about reading Brightness Long Ago. I thought you were going to talk me out of it, but now I want to read it even more. I'll just read the last lines.
Was it Lord of Emperors that you just finished?
Yeah, it was absurd, absolutely absurd. The duology. They should have just made it one big book, made it like 800 to 1,000 pages, and it would be like the Pillars of the Earth of fantasy, like that level. I don't really like Pillars of the Earth, but you know that is a book that many millions of people love, and I just feel like Sarantine Mosaic is, you know, it stands by itself. I still like Song for Arbonne more. I like the Troubadours and the themes of love and hate. I really like those themes. So that book is still my favorite GGK, but like Lord of Emperors is like sniffing first place. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah. A Song for Arbonne was so far the only GGK book I read. I read that earlier this year. That's probably a contender for a book for me for the year, for sure. Hope to hit Lions in the next month or so.
It's just so good.
Lions is, I've only read A Song for Arbonne and Lions. I DNF'd to Ghana because I just couldn't. But I friggin' love Lions. That book from start to finish is amazing. And like, talk about endings. Oh my God, the ending of that book is so good. But the prologue for that book,
banger.
Woo, so good. Oh man.
That's the same thing with Sarantine Mosaic, Sailing to Sarantium. The opening chapter is the best short story I've read in a long time. Like that, that's just how he writes those prologues. They're just like scene setting, and oh God, they're so good.
Jimmy, do you recommend reading those right behind each other?
Yeah, yes. I didn't know that when I read Sailing, so I was bitter. I was like, God, I thought it was like Under Heaven, and then the other one, River of Stars, or they're like hundreds of years. No, it's a direct sequel. Like it happens literally directly after. You have to read both, but they're not horrendously long. They're very easy to read because
they look pretty thin. I have them.
I would just read it as one book, personally.
Agreed.
Oh God, so good, so very good.
You read both of them, yeah?
Yeah, I read them in a row, and yeah, both excellent. And I'm not sure which I liked more. I think I liked Sailing This Random a little more.
I think you did, yeah.
Really?
I remember when you read it, you were saying that.
Okay.
It was great.
Yeah, I could see the argument for it because of the prologue. Like the prologue is that good. The prologue might be the best thing in a whole duology.
For me, I like it without spoilers, but our main character is approaching a new situation that he feels is bigger than him, and I like that discomfort of him just dipping his toe in the waters of some of the stuff that he then gets more comfortable with in book 2. But they're both awesome.
Yeah. It's based on the poem, or was partially inspired by William Butler Yeats' Sailing to Byzantium, which if you read the poem and see what it's about, you realize, oh, that is the main character.
Story.
Yeah, that's the story. And I didn't know that till after I read it. So that was kind of a little cool tidbit to learn.
I love how he uses, I mean, he really is, I find him more historical fiction than fantasy for the most part. Like, I know he's kind of classified as historical fantasy, which makes sense. I found that probably the most in A Song for Arbonne and Tigana, just because there's really not a lot of magic in Lions, which I ended up really liking the fact that it was pretty non-existent. But he just does his research so well. Like, that's the thing with him. He's kind of like David Mitchell in that way, where you're like, dude has done his research, and it feels so good to read it because you actually are reading someone that has put in the work, which I love.
Yeah, and then on top of that, it's just really good at telling a story.
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you get one or the other. Most times you don't get either. But like when someone does both, it's something special.
Britain says also where No Country for Old Men's title comes from.
I did not know that. Very cool.
Interesting.
We're learning all kinds of new things. I'm glad you guys had a good experience with the Song for Arbonne. I got a little tired of all the music personally. I'm curious to see how he's going to feel about it because he does not do well with music in books.
It's not music so much as bards specifically, because in D&D,
oh, you're gonna hate it.
He's gonna hate it.
Absurd.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna absolutely hate it.
Yeah, I've been telling him that. I'm like, this will be a challenge for you, which might have also been why it skewed my feelings about the book a little bit because I know how much he hates bards.
If anyone's gonna make me like it, it's GGK.
I mean, that is
we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, he'll give it his best shot. Yeah, there's also it's a little more on the nose than GGK usually is too. Like when they go to this certain place and you realize how they think about the world, it's very like cut and dry. Who's the good and bad guy here for the most part? And I thought that was a little different than the other GGK I've read. Yeah, and I could see people bouncing off of it because of that, but I didn't mind it. In fact, I thought it was kind of fresh because GGK is usually so nuanced. I didn't mind it.
I also think it's based, his historical analog is the Albigensian Crusade, which for Arbonne, which I think is a really interesting, sad and interesting part of history. So, and I've studied that a little bit. So I'm curious how the parallels that he'll draw in that book to the actual history.
Yeah.
Yay for GGK.
to summarize, right?
Right? Yeah, we've made this live stream all for Jake Bishop here. So he's a happy guy. He was part of our conversation that I did with Joanna and Josh with Red Fury Books for Lions, and he's always fun to have just because he loves GGK so very much.
He sure does.
Yeah, he is the guru of GGK. We could call him the GGK. Yeah, you did join at a good time. That was absolutely correct. But yeah, it's good stuff. What's coming up on people's TBRs that they are excited to read?
So much.
I know, right?
So much. And I started so many series I want to continue.
You just want me to send the Excel spreadsheet, Laura.
It continues to grow. This is the problem. Join BookTube thinking you're going to have a community to talk about the books that you've already read, and people just come at you with like 1,000 more books that they want you to read.
Yeah.
It's good.
I think the book I'm most excited to read, I had to pick one. I mean, of new releases, there's a lot of new release stuff coming out that's going to be cool. But like things that have been on my TBR for a long time, I would say The Sparrow by Maria Doria Russell, I believe is her name. Like that's up there. But again, this is a duology where people say you got to read the second book. So that's kind of like dropped it a few notches just because I have so many things that I want to get to.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to be reading Starfish by Peter Watts. And I'm very interested in that because I think Blindsight's one of the most interesting sci-fi books I've ever read. It's about like hard sci-fi with vampires. I mean, it's bizarre. It's all about consciousness. It's so weird. Highly recommend that book if you like out there stuff. But I'm going to be reading Starfish. I'm really excited that, and The Sparrow, which is supposed to have like a lot of religious themes. Like it's like a religious driven sci-fi first contact type deal.
Do you like religion?
Good. Apparently it's really depressing, so I'll probably love it.
Well, it's dealing with religion, so naturally it's going to be depressing. But yes, if it is depressing, I do think that automatically that'll be like a solid.
Yeah, it gets a little. I mean, I don't know. There's books that are depressing I don't like, but generally they're a hit.
That's fair. How about you, Chris? Anything really excited that you're?
Third book of Bloodsworn, John Gwynne. I'm going backwards on John Gwynne. So I started with Bloodsworn. I'll hit Faith in the Fallen maybe sometime in 2025. Probably not the rest of this year, but pretty excited to finish that trilogy. Joe Abercrombie, the standalones. I'll be starting into those hopefully the end of this year. Dandelion Dynasty, you already mentioned. So many books. I like to continue my promote for indie authors. So Rob J. Hayes, I want to finish the Moral Technique series. I read the first two of that. Love them so much. So I want to continue with the last book on that, Spirits of Vengeance. I think those are the ones that come to mind. Bunch of historical fiction. I know you've been pushing me for Augustus, and you've also, I swore I was going to read one Brandon Sanderson this year.
You did?
So I'm going to read Warbreaker.
That's the one I want. So
I tell you, Laura, this is it. If
I'm
I don't like
part of the
this,
problem. I'm just sending you all the books I want you to read.
If I don't like this one, I'm done.
That's fair. That's fair.
I'll give Stormlight a try.
You will like Stormlight Archive, but based on how much you like Wheel of Time, you're definitely gonna like Stormlight Archive, I think.
I'm looking forward to the second half of Red Rising. I read the first 3 books. She read the next 3, and
I read the 4th one.
Oh, that's
yeah. I have finished.
Well, either way, you raved about it, so I want to read those, and of course, Abercrombie. I'm about halfway through the First Law universe, and
I did not rave about that book. I ranted about that book for a lot of it. Yeah, I did not think it was as solid as the first 3 books, but I'm hoping Dark Age will be better because I struggled with a lot of Iron Gold.
Oh, so you're talking about not the newest release, but Iron Gold.
Correct. Yeah, Iron Gold. I think part of it is that it was just really jarring for me to go from the single POV to multi POV because I didn't like a couple of the POVs. Specifically, it's not a spoiler, but I didn't like Lyra's POV at all. I found it really tedious to read, and I've been told she gets better, but like, I don't want to have to wait for someone to get better. I just want to like them from the beginning, and I didn't.
Why don't you tell everyone what you said we were going to buddy read, and I've been itching to read for 3 months now, and you haven't started yet.
We're going to be doing a Song of Ice and Fire reread, but I've been delaying. So, yeah.
I think you should start that now.
Yeah.
Like shut off the screen and just start reading.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I am getting new glasses in a couple of weeks. 1, because my prescription needs updated, and 2, because I have a scratch in the middle of my lenses. I've read 1 physical book in 6 months because my prescription is off, and finally made an appointment to go get my eyes checked.
So in this story, we're currently somewhere over here in the
We're getting there. Don't worry about it. I hate the audiobook narrator for a song.
You don't like Roy? The old boy Roy? Come on, man.
The tire Baelish just killed me. It killed me. Oh my god.
Dude, I love Roy.
Caitlin and Catelyn back and forth.
He's objectively terrible. I love him.
Oh, it's so bad.
He's literally my favorite narrator. Yeah, I love him so much.
Yeah,
He was like literally dying when he did Dance with Dragons.
Yeah.
Like he was actually dying, and he was like, "I'm finishing it. I don't care."
Which, like, good for him, but also terrible for my ears. Like, it's just not good.
They had I wish there was a version that Harry Lloyd did.
Oh, so good.
Oh man,
so good.
He played, for if you don't know, he played Viserys in the show for the first 3 episodes before he encountered
before
he got his crown. He got his
crown. But he did did he do?
He did the Duncan Eggs.
The Duncan Eggs,
books.
and he is
good.
excellent.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Simon Vance does Fire and Blood, and he also did an excellent job.
loved
Literally anybody else. They could just do anybody else, and it would be better.
Really, it literally could be anybody else. Joanna was sending me people that had done it for YouTube, and she's like, "You might be able to listen to this." And I tried, and I was like, "It's better, but it's still not what I'm going for." And I think in part it's because I listened to Fire and Blood and the Duncan Egg stories, and I'm like, it can be done really well, guys. Like, we've just chosen to stick with Roy, and it's terrible. So.
You know that they've approached him and said, we want to do like a full drama, and he's just like, nope, Roy's my best friend, and I don't care.
That's it. And I mean, like, good for him, fine, but therefore I need to be able to physically read this book, and I need new glasses, so it's happening in a couple of weeks.
Dude, those late Daenerys chapters are rough. He's like, oh, Dario. Like, grass became wet as she defecated. And it's like, what the?
Oh my god, I can't see. That's the thing. Like, if Pacey could do it, oh my god, that would be amazing.
Oh,
so freaking good. Oh,
Grimace.
so
You get
good.
getting spoiled with Pacey.
I cannot have someone read to me. I will lose my mind.
Not only that, but listen to my voice. Do you want this voice reading 800 pages of the book to you? No, you don't.
Oh my god, I don't know who Anne Flosnick is.
She's actually the worst. She's actually the worst, though.
Oh, I did listen to a narrator not long ago, and I almost quit the book because I was like, her voice is grating, but it was a really short book, so I suffered through. But now I'm wondering if it's that woman.
If it was her, you would. I mean, she's like legitimately the worst I've ever heard. She did Live Ship Traders series for Robin Hobb and ruined it. I mean, really bad. Really bad.
That's unfortunate. What was this? Yes, we will be.
It'll be a few chapters at a time, but
yeah, it'll be a slow pace read because it's not like we've got a new book to rush to, so we can take our time.
I'm betting the
by 2037 we're gonna have Winds of Winter.
Hey, I said November 2024. So if it passes this year, which it will, I will officially bow out of my copium and no longer predict any new future dates. But I've been on 2024 since 2019.
Yeah, I know you've been pitching that.
It was interesting when they canceled, when they had a number of things scheduled, new releases scheduled, and they canceled them all. What was it, last year? That definitely raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah, I thought it was going to happen.
His latest blog post was optimistic. It sounded like something was happening, but like, I don't know. I'm high on copium constantly, so I don't really know. I mean, it doesn't cost me anything to be hopeful, but
no. The last one I read said that he hadn't written anything in a year, so obviously we did not read the same blog post.
No. The whole he didn't write in a year thing was people taking things out of context, and then an interview he did with Bernard Cornwell actually, and they like extrapolated that he must have not written, but they weren't accounting for rewrites, they weren't accounting for editing, which he does do as he goes.
Yeah.
As far as we could tell, he had like 25 chapters to go in 2021. So I mean, he's not like super far off.
I remember back sitting at a job that I hated in 2013.
Comcast, guys.
Yeah, Comcast. It was the Dolan job I could get at the time. But reading and rereading all the sample chapters he'd put out, including some that have since disappeared. But they were so good. I was so amped that Winds of Winter was going to be 2 years down the road.
Dude, Mercy is a banger of a chapter. The pre-release one is so good. My homepage is not a blog. Like every time I browse it's not a blog. It's been that way for years.
Jake, just to acknowledge you, Stephen Pacey, Joe Abercrombie is king in my book. Like, I love him so very much, but Pacey and him is a perfect marriage. That's why that series I think is so good. If you listen to it on audio, it's just perfection. I love it. And it made even the lesser books for me very enjoyable because that was Red Country. I needed Stephen Pacey to pull me through.
It amped up my reread of The First Law tenfold when I listened to the audio the second time, because I read them the first time, enjoyed them, but yeah, when you got the audio, wow, that just blew it out, and I was like, oh yeah, this is really good now.
The problem is I really like reading Drew Abercrombie's writing because I think he's really talented. So like I actually enjoy the experience of reading his written words, but also, you know, Pacey's awesome. So it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I did the first 2 books physical only, and then got a concussion and was like, I need a book to distract me from how terrible life is. I'm going to listen to the third one because I was in the middle of Last Argument of Kings when this happened. I was very upset because I was like, I need to know what happens in this book, and started listening to it and was like, this is an experience. Like, I feel like this is an event listening to Stephen Pacey, just because he really does sound like a whole cast of people, which now I can put on any one of those books and I don't even really need to be paying attention to the story. If I hear a certain inflection, I'm like, oh, it's that character. So I love that very, very much. But also his lisp for Glockta is my favorite thing that's ever happened in audiobook format. So yeah, it's just perfection. I love him so much.
I will probably read the physical copies of the standalones first before I consider audio.
This is a big one.
You know, we had many meetings about what level of appreciation we should have for callers, and it ended up being 0. So I'm sorry to burst the bubble, but Comcast truly does not appreciate when you call.
They don't care. In fact, they do everything that they possibly can to not speak to you. In all
seriousness, they are an evil company. Like, I was in the legal department, and it was just like, they would have meetings about how can we lie to the federal government to hide this, and that was the day at Comcast. That's why I got fired really quickly from there.
There's a reason Josh doesn't work at Comcast anymore, guys. He wouldn't break the law. It might have been the concussion talking. You never know. Sometimes the concussion says some strange things. It's been debatable. Yeah, no, they did not. But yeah.
So I got a question for you too. You know, it's probably hard to tell, but do you have maybe a favorite video you either may have done together or on your own on each that you put out that you're just proud of, that you just keep in your back of your head and that was a great video kind of thing?
I feel like all the videos I really like that I do, no one else really likes. I feel like that's kind of the general consensus is you're like, I put a shit ton of work into this, and you're like, it has my lowest viewership out of the last 10 videos. Cool.
Well, that now's a good time to tell us. That way, maybe.
Right? I'm trying to think about it. I'll have to think about it. Jimmy, do you have one off the top of your head that you're like, oh yeah, I really like that video?
I really liked my Hobbit review. No one watched it. Same thing. You know, you'll be like, I'm going to put some extra mustard on this one, and then it does. Yeah. Nobody cares. Yeah, that was my Hobbit review. I think I took it down. I don't even remember.
Did you?
I might have. Other videos. I'm just really proud of the Malazan discussions. I really love those because it was just unapologetically like me being lost. Like, hey, like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And Philip, can you explain this thing to me? And then he would, and I'd be like, that's crazy. That happened in this book I just read. So that was kind of fun. I think that's it. I mean, I sound egotistical because I keep listing videos. I really loved my 2-year end videos this past year. My top 12 books in 12 minutes or less. And the middies. Yeah, I worked really hard on those, like conceptually, like how did I want it to look? What was the flow? Like I tried to actually like storyboard it out a little bit, and I really liked the way they came out. And unfortunately, they actually underperformed like to every other year in the video I've ever done is actually like way less. And that's how I knew my channel was dying. So I was like, I made a top 10 video and I didn't get like it's over. We can pack it up.
I just did a top 10 and it poorly performed. So there you go. Like it means nothing.
There's a skill to it, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like
were you not impressive enough in your thumbnail, Laura?
I think I read books that
Yeah.
no one really cares to hear about. Like my top book of the year was The Scar by China Miéville. I don't think anyone cared about that.
I remember thinking that, and I was like, Jimmy and like 6 other people read this book this year.
Yeah, like nobody cares about China Miéville, but me and like she said, like 6 other people.
Oh,
So,
see, I'm adding Perdido Street Station sometime this year too.
he's right. He's releasing a book with Keanu Reeves in a month. You could read that.
Yeah,
It's
the
first fiction
Nutties,
book in 10
Jimmy.
years.
The Nutties are great.
I love them too.
I love when
I
booktubers do the
specifically
awards.
messaged you and I was like, is this a play on the Dundies? Thinking it was related to The Office. And you were like, no. I was like, well, there goes that.
No, I'm not that creative. I just said my name with a Y. Yep, that sounds about right. That sounds good. I put my face on a trophy. Yeah.
Hilarious. But I feel like in terms of favorite videos, all my love bombs have been really great just because I get to chat to people, which is why I joined BookTube. But like editing my first video was fun. Just kind of getting a knack for what I was going to do. It's terrible. Like it's really, really bad. And I still don't necessarily feel like I have found my voice yet. I feel like that's an ever evolving thing. And I just keep experimenting with new kinds of videos until I find one that I like that I'm going to stick with. But it's interesting when you do your first video because I feel like you go into it and you're like, this is going to be super easy. And then an hour and a half later when you're editing it, you're like, why did I think this was going to be a good idea? But now I've gotten it down to a science pretty much that like the editing process is quick because I know the program that I'm using. Whereas the first time I was like, here we go, settle in for all the YouTube tutorials until I get this somewhat correct. And even still, it was not very good. So yeah, but I like one video where I just gush about books that I really, really love. It's if you go to my page, it's my book or video intro for people, basically, if they're new to my channel. Because basically it's just me going on for 20 minutes about why people should read the things that I like. So yeah, it's great.
Do you ever get people to come back and tell you that they tried it and they hated it?
I have only had positives so far. Like people have messaged me and they're like, I tried this. I loved it. I've put other books now on the TBR that I trust you. And I'm like, cool. Like, we'll see when you get to the end of those books. But the most success I feel of recommendations that I've had based on that video have been Pure and Easy and Cersei. Those have been the two big standouts because a lot of the other books people had already read, like A Song of Ice and Fire and Good Omens and things like that. Like I feel they've been well established in the fantasy community for a long time. So
yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like a lot of people say, like, I want new recommendations. Everyone talks about the same stuff, but then like when you talk about the new stuff, like no one cares. And it's
I know.
like, well, there's conflicting messages here. I had this talk with Matt on Bend the Knee when we recorded today. And we were kind of talking about like franchise. We were talking about Warner Brothers is going to have to lean heavily on Dune and Westeros for now because like they just suck. And we were talking about how like me and him, we kind of just watch certain things and we don't really try new things out on TV because I just don't. And I'm like, it's funny because we complain that Hollywood won't try anything new, but when they try something new, I'm like, I'm not trying that. I don't know what that is. Like I'm the problem. Like I am one of the problems that face it. So there's like that conflict exists, I think, also in book recommendations as well.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Kyle's bitter because I didn't mention him in a vlog that I was talking about how Alan loves ancient Rome as much as I do. And Kyle apparently also loves Rome as much as I do. And so does Chris. So everyone's been mentioned now that really loves ancient Rome.
I don't.
Jimmy doesn't. So there we go. We've established
it. Have it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely feel that way that like people will say to me, they're like, yeah, I only have Netflix for X. And it's because they just rewatch the same thing over and over. And I feel like we kind of get in that rhythm with books a lot of the time where it's like we'll only stick to the authors that we know, or we just keep rereading the same series, which like if that's what makes you happy, then fine. But I found a bunch of new people over the last year and it's been great.
Yeah.
How about you, Chris? Is there a video that you are really happy about?
I think like you, Laura, I mean, we're new. I think we're always still trying to find our voice. And I know I'm definitely still trying to find my voice. But the one things I will say I'm proud of, not necessarily one video per se, but anytime I can give like a shout out to, we were talking about popular authors, but if I can give a shout out to like lesser known authors and talk a little bit about their books, I feel good about myself, and they reach out, they say, hey, you made my day, by mentioning my book and talking about it, and getting a little more exposure to it. So to me, that's pretty rewarding. But I agree, live streams are, I think, the best part is having that interaction. Sometimes when you're just like looking at a camera and you're not really, you feel like you're just talking to yourself essentially. So live streams I think are probably the best part too. So especially when you do like book discussions and all that. So
I will agree with this comment. I have cackled with some of your bloopers, like actively cackled. They are so funny. When you start swearing because you've messed up a word, I love it.
I would love one day to sit down and record a 10-minute video in actually 10 minutes. Not 2 hours.
Good luck.
Tell me if that ever happens, except for Brian Lee Durfee. He's probably the only one. He turns on a camera, he says his piece, he puts out this amazing video, and he's done.
I don't even like when I do my monthly wrap-ups, I have my list in front of me from Goodreads from everything I read the previous month. And I will see what the title of the first book is, and you can go and watch my videos for the last few months. There is always a jump cut from when I say the first book I read last month is to the book I actually said, because I've already forgotten. Like I am looking at, I have to shift back to my computer, look at it, and then back to the camera. And I'm like, well, we're off to a great start. And then I ramble for half an hour and it ends up being 15 minutes. It's just...
There was once I forgot the name of my channel. I was like, hey, everybody, I'm...
That was in one of your bloopers, and I loved it. It was one of the times I was like, this is quality content. It was so funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah. See, everyone agrees. They're the best.
It's a double-edged sword though. It's like if I actually get good at actually sitting down and filming, then there's less bloopers, and then
you
people
lose
are
the
like, I only show up for your bloopers.
You just gotta start planning them, that's all.
Right.
So,
do you guys write any kind of script, or are you kind of just talking?
Usually just talking 90% of the time. I mean, like on the year-end video, I said I'm going to try to write just 3 sentences about each book. And that was more so because I read a lot of books with the same themes, so I didn't want to like repeat myself a bunch. I hate repeating myself. I do it all the time, but I hate it. So I was like, I'm going to make sure they're unique sentences, and I will do that. And then I said, you know what? I'll try to keep it to a minute a book. And that was the last time I ever wrote something out. I'll bullet points every now and then. But like for the most part, I'm winging it. I filmed a 20-minute vlog entry yesterday. That was nonsense. I'm like, who is going to watch this? Like, I have no idea why I talk. Yeah, thanks. I don't know why. There has to be something better to do.
I love vlogs because I can have them on in the background while I'm doing stuff. Because I'm like, it's like we're just hanging out, which is why vlogs are so easy, right? Like you just pull out your phone and you ramble at it for like however long.
And then your spouse hears you talking to nobody and thinks you're going crazy.
Yeah, that's happened quite a few times recently where he's like, did you say something? I'm like, yes, to the void.
But not to you.
Not to you. To the 6 people that are going to watch this on YouTube. So,
yeah. I definitely sometimes feel insane talking to the camera because I'll be like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, no one's here.
No one knows.
I usually just bullet point, just like a title and an author's name, just kind of so I don't have to like, if I have the book in my hand, I'm not like that because I'll of course forget it when I'm actually filming. So having it just directly in front of the camera, and that's it. It's usually just like a bullet point. Book, author.
I wrote a script for a couple of videos. I think the last one was is the Wheel of Time an original idea, because I wanted to make sure that I hit all of my bullet points for that, which in terms of videos that I really enjoyed making, that was probably one of them, because I talked quite a bit about religion and different themes and stuff that Robert Jordan just straight up stole, but which is fine, like because all authors are doing that. Like there's really no original ideas left. I feel like we're kind of just reworking everything. So
I agree.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it. It's just I wanted to talk about the fact that even though it's not an original idea, that doesn't matter, and these are probably the inspirations and sources that he got his idea from, because I like that type of thing. Like, I don't care if a story is derivative, but I am interested in what inspired that story. Like I was telling Jimmy a couple days ago, I think Elantris was 100% inspired by the Isle of the Dead in Winter King. I feel like that is the concept of the Isle of the Dead. And Sanderson was like, what if that was the whole book? So I like knowing that type of stuff because I find it fascinating.
So Josh, I got to ask you, do you happily engage in these videos, or does Laura kind of like pull you in?
I feel there is an active emotional barrier that goes up that I better go to the basement and just mind my business down there for a while.
Well, here's the thing. We have a 2-year-old who is very loud, and I have very limited time to film without noise. Like I have a little bit of nap time, and then I have in the evening. By the time evening rolls around, I'm pretty useless most of the time. Like my brain is fried and I'm just way too tired. So I usually try to opt for nap time, which is also Josh's lunchtime. So it is a coordination of like, can you please be quiet, make your lunch, and go downstairs so I can have a half an hour to film. Because this is our dining room, which is like, our house is 200 years old and there's not really like separated spaces. There's separated spaces, but everything is
there's spaces that made sense 200 years ago.
Yeah. So it's just like, we don't have a dedicated office. We have our basement, which is dark and dingy. If you go and you watch my first few videos, like you see how dark it is. And then we have our dining room. So these are my two options, and they're both in public spaces. So I'm doing just fine. And Josh is helping, being very cooperative.
I sometimes get in a bad mood when I film as well. Like I notice I'm getting like irritable. I don't know why that is. Doesn't make sense. But it does happen to me. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Yeah. I have to remind myself sometimes. I'm like, you're doing this for fun. Like no one's forcing you.
Yeah.
Wait, we're doing this for fun? What?
Right?
But Chris, to answer your question though, in a part 2, because I just realized this, when she's doing a live, which is usually in the evening, and I'm not participating in the live, obviously, but I'll hear them saying something. I just want to yell up like
and interject.
Interject. You know,
you
obviously,
should. You're part of Fantasy Awash. You should.
Yeah.
According to this one, I got too big for.
He got too tired of me and decided, you know what? I don't need to do this anymore. So his name got.
I was gonna say, is he gonna hijack your channel there, Lauren?
Hey, if he wants to put in all the work of filming and editing, like, go ahead.
Yeah, but the problem is, I would probably just hijack it and just do, my own thing. I do some books that I like, then it would just go off on the deep end about other stuff.
It would mostly become a Star Trek: The Next Generation channel. Like, I think that's probably where we would head.
X-Files, The Expanse, Deep Space Nine, Battlestar Galactica. There would be great stuff on there, and it would be pretty much.
Well, I mean, that's the cool thing about like Story 2, because once in a while you get a Yolanda video, once in a while you get a Carlos video, and then they come together. So yeah.
Jimmy, would you like to give us your Alan impersonation?
Jeez. Christina. That's my impersonation.
I had my love bomb with Alan the other day, and it was so funny because I know, if you know Alan, you know he's going to be like 10 minutes late always. Yes. And for the first 10 minutes, people were just living it up in the comments and being like, Alan's going to make it 2 minutes into this conversation before he goes off on something that he hates. Like, this will not be a love bomb. This will be an anti-love bomb. It was so funny seeing everyone just get so riled about it. And I mean, Alan did as I would expect. Like, he did pretty well, but
it was a good one, though.
It was a good ranting session. I had a lot of fun chatting with Alan.
You guys talked about a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know anything about, but I had it on the whole time.
Thank you. Yeah, we, Alan and I, the thing I think that we both like collectively is Rome. Like, in terms of books, Alan and I like Augustus, which again, Roman. And we now both like the Warlord Chronicles, but he really doesn't like a lot of the books that I like. So, yeah.
I have recommended Alan 2 books, and both of them are 5-star books for him. And I still have to fight him every time I want to recommend him a book. It's like I recommend a book every day either. It's like every 6 months, I'm like, this is one you should probably take a look at.
What are the two that you've recommended?
Stoner and Remains of the Day. He gave both 5 stars, and we talked about Remains of the Day, and man, Remains of the Day is a great book. So good.
Did he read Stoner before he read Augustus?
Yes. So Stoner introduced him to John Williams.
Gotcha.
And the only reason why he even took my recommendation, he was the first person I talked to after I read it, because I read it because it was on my Patreon wheel. And this is before I was starting to get a lot into any sort of like literary fiction or contemporary stuff. And I was like, oh God, this book is going to suck. And then I read it, and I was in like, I don't know, maybe 80 pages. And I was like, Alan's got to read this. My God. And he only read it because it was free on Audible. That's the only reason why I read it. He was like, I'll do it just because it's free. And I said, okay. And then, he's messaging me like, I hate Edith. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted. But it's also interesting because those 2 books are opposite of each other. Like John Williams wrote it from Stoner from a perspective of like having a job and being obsessed with it, and just like the nobility of having a job and being your passion over your family and everything. Like he's actually pro that. Remains of the Day is a warning against that. Which I find that those 2 books like kind of go hand in hand together. And I don't know why Bobby B just got focused randomly on my camera. Oh, I'm back. Okay.
He's trying to interject himself. He's like Josh wanting to yell from the basement. There you go. That's so funny. Yeah, I need to read Stoner. I feel like in part it's gonna hit a little too close to home just because of my my history with academia and all of that. So I haven't been like super eager to read it because I have a feeling like I loved Augustus so much. It's one of my all-time favorite books ever. Phenomenal. I know I'm going to like it just based on his style of writing, but based on the content, I know I'm going to get really fired up about it. Like I just know. So
yeah, it is one of the anyone that's been in academia that's read it, it has been kind of uncomfortable, I think, for them to read it. But I don't think any of them regretted reading it. I think that they appreciate it, but it's very tough to get through.
I think it's because so Stoner is one of the few books that I will go into not entirely blind. Like I have a general idea of what's going on. And I think the reason people are so uncomfortable is because of how accurate it is. Like even a few years ago, the conversation that I was having with Josh was if I choose to pursue going for my PhD with the hope that I get a job teaching, like we can't have a family. Like that is the primary focus. Like there's no children, there's the job and some cats. Like, which at the time I thought sounded great. I was like, this is awesome. Like we'll do this forever. But even in both of my degrees, all of the female teachers, like for the most part, none of them had children. A lot of them weren't married because you're married to your job. Like that is the primary focus, the sole focus. And that's the goal. And that's when you work towards that singular thing for, 30 years, when if you're counting from starting school, literally to the point where you finish school, like that's literally the point. So it is uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep book, and even so, I'm not in academia, I'm not educated, but I resonated with just the mortality. And by the way, he tells you the entire story on page 1, so you can't spoil the book. He literally tells you everything that's going to happen, page 1, and then proceeds to go through it and just in the most smoothest way possible explain mortality. It's so good. But I actually think I like Remains of the Day maybe more. Actually, like Remains of the Day is like, I think it's a harder recommend because it's about a British butler. It's very it's written in that manner. I mean, it is written properly, but just some of the humor in it's very funny.
I know nothing about that book, like absolutely nothing. Do you
know Downtown Abbey, but better. But I'd have never watched Downtown Abbey. So
I love Downton Abbey very, very much. Josh has refused to watch it with me.
Wait, how do you say it? Is it Downtown Abbey or
Downton? It's D-O-W-N.
It was downtown. I didn't know.
No, it's T-O-N at the end.
I thought it was town too. I was like, wait a minute.
It's still going to be downtown in my brain. I'm never going to change.
That's fine.
If you like that, you should read Remains of the Day.
Downtown Abbey is the American remake.
Thank you, Amy.
How short it is. It's so short.
It isn't that long.
Okay.
No.
The audio is amazing.
Ishiguro, right?
Yeah.
The author? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm looking it up now.
Might be the GOAT.
Okay.
Okay. I'll
Love
look
him.
that up. I like a good
enough.
audiobook, so you might convince me.
I'm all up for. I didn't spend any money today on books today, so.
I spent money on books 2 days ago, so I ordered the hardcovers of Mistborn because I had the shitty mass market paperbacks, and the pages literally fell out the first time I read them.
Laura.
I know Mistborn's not your thing, and then I ordered Empire of Silence in hardcover because I went with Jimmy to a bookstore or 2 bookstores the other day, and I couldn't find the hardcover, so Amazon got my money because
I know we weren't going to catch anything fishing for it. It's unfortunate.
No, so they are now all hanging out on my shelves. But those were my my latest book purchases.
I feel like I buy books like every day.
Yeah, same. Yeah. It's such an impulse.
It is. I mean,
I don't even have to watch videos anymore of other people recommending books now. I just see something and it's just like, oh, that looks good, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find now too since joining BookTube, my tastes have settled a bit more, so I feel more confident in just picking a book, and I'm like, yep, I think that might work for me if it's within a genre. And also just trying new and different things has been kind of fun over the last little while. I feel like I've been more adventurous since starting BookTube.
Also, it's become, I feel that back in the, let's say 2000, so about 20 years ago, you go into whatever, I know you were, in probably like preschool.
Remind me.
But you would go into what was always a really tiny fantasy and sci-fi section. I remember I had when I was again at Comcast, I spent most of my time, writing a book. And because I would go into these sections and just pick a random book off the shelf, and the quality was not good. It's like, I could do better than this. And now you go into those, and of course the sections are bigger. Those fantasy has gotten a lot more panache when it comes to marketing and the money involved, and the quality, because there's a lot more out there and the quality has really gone up. So it's nice that now there's that option to just sort of pick something off the shelf at a bookstore, and the likelihood that you're going to get something fun or well written, or hopefully both, is much, much higher than it used to be.
Yeah, I think that also it's easier to decipher which book is going to pertain to your interest. Like they're better at marketing books now, I think. They still struggle, there's still downsides to it, but for the most part, you can kind of figure out, if you like this book, what should be the next thing of that. Now, sometimes I get that totally wrong too, but yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's one of the best functions of BookTube and social, because I mean, it's a solitary activity, reading. But whenever you have people that you either share or don't share taste with, you can curate your list based on their likes and dislikes, and it is actually I don't want to call it a service, but that is a good purpose for what we do.
I think it is almost a service, though.
Yeah.
I think it could be viewed that way. I mean, just in terms of conversations about books, I had very strong feelings about the Bone Clocks, and then I talked to you and Joanna about it, and I was like, I liked this book way more than I thought I did, and I was completely brought out just based on talking to you guys about it. If I hadn't had that conversation, I probably would have continued to view the book in a lesser way. But I think just having those interactions with people, sometimes positive and negative, right? Where it's if someone has a visceral reaction and they're like, I friggin' hated this book. And you're like, oh, I loved it. Why did you hate it? And getting their perspective or vice versa can be a really enjoyable experience. I just like knowing why people feel the way they do about books and interacting with that. And I think BookTube is really great for that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Mitchell's also a unique case because I don't think there's that many authors out there that put as much work and are as intelligent as he is. I really hold him up on a pedestal. I don't even think every one of his books is going to be a home run for me just based on what I know about them. But I know I will come away appreciating the work he put in on the book. I love Cloud Atlas. Oh
I have to read it now based on how much you have raved about this book. But
I don't know if you'll. I don't know.
I don't know.
Get to try it. I mean, I loved it.
Listen, if anyone is remotely like Crispin Hershey, I'm going to enjoy it.
There's a guy in there that's straight out of a BBC comedy. Oh my goodness. He
Fabulous.
is such a dastardly dude. And I just
Fabulous.
loved Timothy Cavendish is such a good character. He might be the best
What a
character that
name.
was written. Oh, it's his naming. I could go on and on.
Well, I mean, let's be real. Crispin Hershey was the first of those names where I was like, that's a choice.
Hugo, like that's another really great
Yes.
name for his character. Like he picks good names.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, Cloud Atlas is legitimately possibly my second favorite book of all time. Like it's top 5 for sure.
What's the first one? What
Storm
are we ranking?
It's not even. There's no competition. It's a Storm of Swords. Yeah.
Storm of Swords. Yeah. Josh is
A Game of Thrones is my favorite.
We'll take it. Any of the 5 could. I mean, if I'm doing more than one per author, all top 8, 9. I would say because I would also include like Sand King short story. Like he's my favorite author. He just is. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But Cloud Atlas is just so unique. You know, it's nothing like Bone Clocks, which is weird. I mean, it is in the sense that there's like vignettes, but like it's just something different. It's so weird. It's like 6 different genres and different styles of writing. Like he goes epistolary to like a thriller, third person. Like it's so insane.
I do love epistolary. I love epistolary so much. Like,
oh my god, he writes it from this this musician, and I think it's the 1800s, and like I can't remember the thing. And the guy is just a piece of crap, and he's like he's trying to learn from this musician, but he's also sleeping with his. It's so.
Oh, he's Hugo. He's
Hugo, but he's like 1800s Hugo, and he's writing letters and like completely missing the point of what he's doing. Like I just don't understand why everyone's so mad at me. Like I don't get it. Like I'm living my life. It's like,
oh my god. I'm gonna have to check out that book.
It's worth an attempt. It's worth an attempt for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you and I talked about this, Joanna. Like Hugo made me so angry. Like I couldn't remember the last time I had been that angry with a character.
Phenomenal.
I have since been that angry with a character, and it is a character from the Age of Madness trilogy because fuck that guy. But Hugo made me pull over my car because my heart rate was increasing. I was just so mad.
Wow.
I was like,
as long as you don't drive the car off a cliff, Hugo would be very upset if you drove it off.
Oh my god. Yeah, and because you totaled the car and you couldn't sell it.
Yeah, what a good bad guy that didn't have to abuse women to do so, you know what I mean? Like so often, you know, just all the time. Like bad guy, he's doing horrible things to women. I get it. I get it. It makes me dislike the person. But like when someone can make a character that's doing just like small things, and you're just
so
like,
unlikable.
William Regal said this to me when I was at TV for one of my WWE tryouts. And he's like, you guys need to not look at like comic book villains. He's like, you should be looking at the people in the airport that are pissing you off. And I was like, oh. And he's like, you know, don't you guys just hate when someone wears sunglasses inside? I'm like, I do. And he's like, that is how you become a villain. Like a villain is in the mundane. And I'm like,
That's
God,
so
that is
funny.
the smartest thing I've ever heard.
Smart.
Oh yeah. Totally changed my wrestling career, actually. Like totally flip-flopped it whenever I would play the heel. So
I mean, the biggest villain of all time is a person that is going like 10 in a 45. Like I lose my mind. It's just that to me, that is evil. It's just,
Or up here in Washington, it's they use the exit lane to use as a passing lane. That's awesome.
That's not a thing in Maryland.
Because in Maryland, everyone in the left lane is going 30 on the interstate.
Horse drivers in America.
Yeah,
it's not great.
I really feel that way.
30 years.
It's not great.
I don't know. South Florida, man. I lived there for 5 years. I needed like a decompression, like for 45 minutes when I got to work and then when I got home from work. And it was only a 20-minute drive, but it felt like eternity.
Best drivers in America, Philly.
They're great. We love Philly drivers because everyone is mad and fast. It's just
but like,
so good.
But they still, everyone's gonna bend the rules like 25%. Like they're gonna make that left as soon as the light's green. The first person is gonna make that left before the traffic goes straight, and everyone knows it. And everyone's in a hurry, but not too much of a hurry. It's great. It's perfect.
We went from that to Richmond, which was just terrible. Richmond drivers, I think, are worse.
If
than
you can
Maryland.
put in jackass, polite, and incompetent all
And
somehow in
one
one
driver.
thing, that's Richmond.
That's Richmond. Yeah, it's
Good
so
barbecue.
funny.
They have very good barbecue.
They do have good barbecue. The food in Richmond, honestly, is
Great.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a slapper.
It's so good. And we were really surprised when we lived there. I was like, oh, this is like arguably really, really good food. That's the thing we miss the most, actually, about Richmond is
it's a good foodie town.
Yeah, it's great. Also, just because we had much more accessibility to food, because now we live in the boonies and there's very little. But it's made me a better cook. So, because I've had to make all the things that I want, but that's fine. What were we talking about before we jumped to traffic? Oh, we were talking about favorite books of all time. Yeah. Chris, do you have a favorite book of all time?
I'm the same with Jimmy. I'm Storm of Swords. There are so many crazy moments in that book that were totally unexpected. I was just floored. I read, of course, the books before the show came out and all that, but it still floors me to this day. And when I do a reread of it, I catch so many things I missed, so many times every time I read that book, which I think has been like 4 now, because I usually read it again when a new book came out. Well, 4 and 5 anyway. And it's funny how a series that's not finished just hits so well. It's like I care. I kind of want an ending. I kind of want to see where he goes with it, but at the same time, I really don't care in a sense too, because the 5 books are just so impactful.
Feel the same way about Gentlemen Bastards. Like, those books are just great anyways. Like, who cares if it's finished? Like, I mean, of course I'd like it finished, but like,
the thing is, it's not so much like
I'm getting more water.
All right, well then, Fantasy Awash with Josh. It begins now.
Yes, that's right.
But with Gentlemen Bastards, I think it's a little different for me. For Song of Ice and Fire, it is unfinished. There was active story that is right now. It's cliffhanger. Yeah. And also, it doesn't help that the show crashed and burned so badly, and I feel like you need something to wash that down, and that would be George finishing the series. But with Gentlemen Bastards, I'm in the same boat of I really want more, but it's more just because all 3 books were sort of like there were sort of 1 to 2 vignettes of the story per book, and I just really liked it. And yes, it could end now, and it's not like it's a little open ended as to what happens with some of the characters, but there's not a major cliffhanger. But it was so much fun. I want more.
Yeah, it's more of like, this is good. I would like to see more. Like, I feel like he has more to do, because honestly, I mean, a lot's happened in the series, but not a lot's happened at the same time, because you can feel the overarching plot. Like, there's something more going on, and a lot of it has to do with like the more fantastical stuff, and I'd like to see more of that. But like for like A Song of Ice and Fire, it's like the way George writes is a very historical approach, where like we're not totally sure of what's happened when. Like, that's not exclusive to Fire and Blood, but it's also obvious in the series. And I think that is what will continue to provide conversation about the series for like the next 100 to 200, 300 years, however long we can keep humanity afloat for. And I think because of that nature of the story and the way he's written it, that's why I don't mind as much as the ending. I'm also not a big ending person. Like, I just don't really care. Like, I don't watch the last season of television shows I like, because I don't care. I don't want to know. I just want it to be like still in my head, like going on. So in a weird way, that also kind of like it not being finished plays into that piece of me, which is kind of neat. But yeah, Danny's been a Marine for like 20 years. Yeah, she has been in Marine for like 20 years. I think Winds is the book that people would really like to see, because it is A Storm of Swords of like the second era, and then Dream of Spring is supposed to be like the kind of the closing note for everything, which is obviously humongously important. But I think with the release of the Winds of Winter, Feast and Dance, which I love, would immediately get better. I think Game of Thrones and Clash of Kings are better because of Storm of Swords exists. I think going back and rereading those, they become much better books because of it. So I think that that 4 and 5 would also increase. So I would really love to see the Winds of Winter. I would really love to see that. I have no delusions that A Dream for Spring is ever going to happen.
Yeah, the Winds of Winter though. I love the whole Aegon storyline. Who's likely a Blackfire, and this and the Bartels and Arianne, who I think is a really interesting character, and how she's going to be interacting with him. And that's something that I feel Winds of Winter would give us probably the end in one way or the other. I feel like that storyline would come to a head in that book. And I really want to know what happens with that. I mean, that's just a storyline, because the show, the characters, you sort of have on one medium, piss poor ending for a lot of these characters. But that was one storyline that was untouched, fortunately, by the show. So I really just want to see how that ends.
Was there house discussions that I missed?
Which is on his shirt.
Oh, it's House of the Dragon. It's just a House of the Dragon shirt. It's actually a very comfortable shirt. I very much enjoy this shirt. Usually, like nerd t-shirts, they're not the best quality.
No, they're not.
Yeah, they're usually that hard.
Yeah, this is from Box Lunch. This is like legit a great shirt. I love it.
My Greyjoy shirt is actually very comfortable.
Yeah, you like your Greyjoy shirt. Also, like the necks I find are usually really high on nerdy t-shirts.
Yeah, this is like pretty loose.
Yeah. Can't breathe.
And they're usually small holes too.
Yeah. We got a Words of Radiance right now, which is a great one. First time soon, so you are in for some very good reading. Be curious to see if Words of Radiance stays your favorite, or if it becomes one of the A Song of Ice and Fire books. Josh and I are the hot take opinions that Storm of Swords is not our favorite of the A Song of Ice and Fire books.
Was yours, Laura, Clash of Kings? Was that your favorite?
Yeah. I love Clash of Kings.
I love them all. So any of them are.
Yeah, I liked Clash of Kings just as much.
I don't know. It's not my favorite book of all time, but I don't know if I can pick a favorite book of all time.
It's hard. It's really hard to do.
The thing is like it really depends on what mood I'm in, right? Like if I want a big epic fantasy, I'd probably say, it's Clash of Kings, or I also love Words of Radiance. Like I think Words of Radiance is a great book. If I want something a little bit more off the wall, I'm going to be like Neil Gaiman. Like, it's Neil Gaiman. If I want something that is, going to make me laugh, but also super enjoyable, it's literally anything by Joe Abercrombie. So it just depends on the mood. I can't say that.
I describe it as like pillars of taste.
Yeah.
What are the pillars of your taste are more important than like what's your number one book of all time? I mean,
yeah,
you can extrapolate something, but like there's also like the whole like nostalgia factor is really hard to defeat. Like I know A Song of Ice and Fire, like I'm biased towards it because it got me back in the reading. So it's like, like how does anything ever beat that? Like it's not fair. It's not really fair.
I sacrificed my first time taking the bar exam because I picked up those books and I was like, for the next 2 months, I can study for the bar exam, or I can read the entire series and then read it a second time. And that's what I did.
I love that.
Yes, you didn't pass the bar that go around. Worth it.
I agree. In retrospect, it was more enjoyable to spend 2 months reading and rereading that series than it would have been studying contract law.
100%.
Yeah. I don't know, honestly, like if I could even have a list, I guess, if I had to pick like favorite books. There's a few on the list. Like when I have my video gushing about books, like those are some of the favorites.
There is a top sort of.
Yeah, there's a top tier. But I will say like I've added new ones over the last year and a half. He's going to definitely knock stuff over. Hi, Murray. He's so untrustworthy.
He's got to make an appearance. Right?
Always. He's like every single time I make a live, he has to be seen by everybody. But even now, I'm in the midst of, Warlord Chronicles, and I'm like, this is definitely a top series, top book for me. Like it's that I was saying to Josh, I was like, it's definitely going to be one of my top series of all time. Like it might be top 3 series of all time. I just love it. So recency bias be damned. Hey, John. Thank you. John's going to be on a Love Bomb chat coming up pretty soon.
John's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, John's great.
He's promised to make you barbecue if you go to North Carolina.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to go. I need to get down there.
I have my niece that lives in North Carolina. That's a good
We'll have to make it a meetup.
I think that would be so fun. I
just don't like North Carolina that much. But
no, I don't at all.
Okay.
I mean, not at all. I like the Outer Banks, but it's not my favorite place to be. It's just too hot. It's way too warm.
Also, just driving south past DC, it's like, okay, I'm gonna spend
boring.
2 hours of traffic in DC, and then when I get to Richmond, that's another 2 hours traffic. So the 6-hour drive turns into 9 hours, and I'm like, I hate everything.
And 95 is the most boring road.
It's so boring.
ever
Oh
made.
yeah. The only worse road than that is driving to Roanoke. Roanoke is just the whole way. It makes my wife very sick, and honestly, it bothers me. And I don't even get car sick.
I felt that way when we drove there. Our friends got married there, and
it's a cool town. It's an okay town, but
we didn't even actually get into the proper town.
Back in the day, I would take 29 instead of the interstate, just because it was a much nicer drive, even though it was about an hour slower.
This is fair, John, but when you come from Canada, it's way too hot.
I'm hot.
Yeah, I think he's pretty good. Yeah, there are a lot of booktubers in North Carolina.
See, this is why I'm kind of mad that I didn't score Dragonsteel tickets this year, because it's like there was a bunch of booktubers going to it this year, and yeah,
you didn't get tickets?
I didn't get tickets.
Like they're sold out completely.
Yeah.
Didn't they sell out really fast?
Yeah.
And now even if they reappear, or even if they put them up again, I gave away my hotel. So
yeah, I decided I wasn't gonna go. I need to cancel my hotel actually.
We did cancel ours. We also decided we weren't gonna go.
Yeah, I was gonna go, and then I decided I'd rather go to Ireland, so I'm just gonna do that. So,
yeah, I would take Ireland.
Yeah, I know. And then Laura's going to Ireland like a week after me, and I'm like, well, you should have just made it a group trip.
Hey,
Brandon,
we're not
yet.
So
I mean, I was just going to show up to Dragonsteel to tell Brandon I only read the last 3 books of Wheel of Time. That's not your universe, and then Mistborn was mid for me. Have a good time.
You really just want to meet people, right?
Yeah.
That's
I would love to meet him. I respect him for everything he's done for the community, for sure.
Yeah. According to Derry, Jimmy, you got to take Chatting with Nuts on the road.
Yeah, I'll probably do with Carlos and Yolanda. We'll see. I'm a big fan of just enjoying the moment. Like that's why vlogging was very counterintuitive for me whenever I pick reroll. I'm getting better at it though. So we'll see. And I will hit the Jameson distillery, John. And I'm definitely going to go to the Guinness as well.
Oh yes, I went there. We went on our business trip. We went to the Jameson distillery. That was a lot of fun.
These all sound like you activities.
Everyone says it's awesome.
It was a good time.
I want to find the most local of local pubs and just get something there.
I already got the criteria. Apparently it needs to have carpet, no windows, and the drink should be on the bar ready to go. And a lot of old men. A lot of really old men.
The old men is key. Yeah. Ones that you can barely understand and feel like they've been there since the bar was built.
Those were the parameters that Yolanda gave me.
That sounds about right. That's pretty similar to what Carlos was telling me. So they're giving similar advice. I did
the carpet is the weird thing. I don't know about that. It's weird.
I don't love that.
I don't love that.
Yeah, that's my point. Like that, they're not cleaning that carpet a whole lot. So no.
Yeah,
it's not something I'm going to be super into. But I will be very interested in getting to some outdoor pretty spots. Like if I can find ruins in Ireland, I will be very happy.
Northern Ireland for sure.
Yeah, I don't know where we're going yet. So
we're our next international trip is Iceland and the Faroe Islands.
Nice.
That's very cool.
Yeah, Iceland has been on our list.
Although we almost switched that when we saw Zach and Hillary at Japan. I was like, I want to go to Japan so bad.
Yeah. Japan would be nice. My brother was supposed to do his honeymoon there and then changed it because his wife is buying a horse, so they're not going to Japan because that's what people do. So, yeah, but always looking for new BookTube besties. Well, yes, it's been a good year for finding BookTube besties for sure. Yeah, reading obituaries.
That's pretty awesome.
So this is not super related, but somewhat related. Josh's grandfather lived to be 101. Like, was an incredible person. The first time I met him, he was 90. How old was he? 97-ish. Went over to his house and he pulls out all of these photo albums to show me and starts naming every single person. He's like, this is so-and-so, they're dead. This is so-and-so, they were a dentist, they're dead too. And just named every singular dead person in that book.
Which was pretty much everyone.
Which was everyone. It was an event.
Pop had one. He was probably the single biggest role model I've had in my life, and he lived an amazing life.
Yeah, he was such a cool person.
He had a trick too. We went at his 100th birthday party. Actually, no, he was 90. He was 98. No, because it was Andy's graduation. Yeah. Anyways, so he was 98, and there was this little pub in the town where they live, and my family rented out the top floor of it for my cousin's celebration. The whole family got together. And so my 98-year-old grandfather kept coming up to different people because everyone knew, don't let Pop-Up drink too much. And he kept asking people, hey, can you go give me my second old fashioned? And then the next person, can you give me my second old fashioned? So he had about 15 because he kept telling people to get him his second. So
yeah, it was brilliant.
He beat the system. Yeah.
That's amazing.
He was so funny. And like, we ended up, this was when Mad Men was still on. And his aunt and I watched Mad Men. So we put it on. And of course, like, Don Draper and the secretary like start getting it on a desk. And his grandfather sits down in his chair and he's like, I don't remember it being like that. Like, it was just so funny. Like, perfect commentary for everything about life. Like, delightful humans.
That is amazing.
That's great. He was one of the good ones. So I highly encourage, if you are going to find a pub where they're like with the obituaries and stuff, it could be very entertaining.
Oh, it'll be amazing. My mom will text me, be like, do you remember Nina? And I'm like, maybe. She's like, yeah, she's dead. I'm like,
I know.
Solid. You remember Ralph? Oh yeah, I remember Ralph, my second grade teacher. Yeah, he died. He's dead. I'm like, all right.
I don't know what it is about moms. Like, they just do that. Like, my mom, anytime she hears bad news, she's like, you know who needs to hear this? And I'm like, I just don't.
It will be someone like completely unrelated. Like,
yeah,
she'll have to spend a few minutes explaining who the person is to tell you they died.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, oh yeah, it's like Robbie. That was Tessa's cousin, and I'm like, I don't know any of these people, and she's like,
exactly.
Well, he died in a car wreck. I'm like, that's crazy. That's wild.
I often get all the doomsday stuff too. Like, my mom will be like, "There's salmonella happening in California." I'm like, I live nowhere near there. You know, it's just like
my mom also like sends preemptive text, but like with the message, so she'll be like, "I need to tell you something. Your grandpa died," and I'm like, shouldn't you have sent on the first one? Like, there was no dramatic pause. She didn't like space it out. She just, I need to tell you something. Your grandfather's dead. And I'm like, first off, that's very rude that you texted me that. Yes. Like, why wouldn't you call me? And then I wasn't even sad at the moment because I was just so mad about the structure of the text message. I was like, what is this? Like, I don't understand.
Oh man, my mom used to do that in voicemails. Not that people died, but like, she dropped big information. I went to the first time we met in person, all of our friends went to a lake house on Lake Michigan and got a voicemail from my mom. It was like, hey, hope you're having a great time. We're looking forward to seeing you in a few days. Nanny's neck surgery went fine. I'll talk to you when you get home. Bye. Had no idea my grandmother was having surgery at all. Like, straight up just drops that in a voicemail. I was like, cool. So that's been standard now for
similar for here. It's like I belong to my high school reunion Facebook page. I think I keep in contact with like 4 people in high school, but the only time anybody uses it is when somebody died, and it's like nobody like talks about anything else. Like, it's only, hey, and then there's an obituary of one of our classmates, and of course it's depressing because, you know, we're all the same age and our classmates are dropping like flies now, and it's like nobody talks about anything else on that Facebook page except for when the reunion comes up, which I never go to. But it's just like, really, I mean, why? And then they're like wondering why nobody's showing up to the reunions, and I feel like saying, well,
something in those drinks apparently. Oh man.
But yeah, it's just like the most morbid Facebook page I belong to.
I actively avoid anything related to my high school. I'm just like, nope, I didn't do any of the reunion stuff, any of the groups. I didn't go to prom. Like, good. Not my thing.
Most of my classes overdosed on heroin, so I
think the same for mine too.
Yeah,
I was in a small town in Indiana at the time, and everyone still lives there. Everyone still lives in Lafayette, Indiana. Nobody's gone farther than that in their 30 years of life, and people are happy with that. That's if that's the way they want to be. But I'm just like, I can't be that way.
Yeah.
I had a very different experience growing up in a city. So people like pretty much took off as soon as they could, but a lot of them ended up going back.
Day after graduation, I was already finding plans to move to Chicago.
Yeah. The thing that's so different about our schooling system is that in Quebec, you graduate high school in the 11th grade, and then you do a 2-year interim college, and then you go into your bachelor's, which is then 3 years. So the 2-year college is so you can get all of your prereqs out of the way, and you kind of have to decide at that point what you're wanting to major in. But you can also then do 3-year programs, which give you a degree to work in that field. Like my brother did computer science and stuff like that, so he's set up. But yeah, it's just a weird.
Or you can be like me and just never decide what you want to major in until you're a senior and until you're done. And you can
Well, that's the other big thing. Like when you're applying to university or college up there, you have to declare your major on your application because you've done those 2 years of prereqs. Like they're not wasting time. They just want to know off the bat what your plans are. So it can be good if you know what you want to do. If you don't, well, you're shit out of luck. So yeah. You'll be spending a lot of time in college at that point.
I am going to have to bow out here, but
I think we're going to wrap it up.
Okay. Well, if you're wrapping up, then I'll stick for the exit. But
well, thank you both for joining me.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks. I mean, I know you are like, I don't understand why that last hump, I'm telling you, that's you're just like waiting and waiting.
Oh my God. I was so bitter. I was like, I'm so close. I even told Jimmy when I saw him, I was like, I am so close. I don't normally care about numbers all that much. I hate when things are like that. It's just, it's irksome.
Yeah. It's definitely well overdue. And I think for you, just what you do with your channel is, I think once you get that at that 1,000, I think it's just going to go,
That is how it works.
Yeah. I think you'll get that 2,000.
1 to 2 is quick, and then 2 to 5 is fast, and then 5 to 10, you're like, that when? And then it slows down because that's the ceiling.
I feel like now that you guys have said that, it's never going to happen.
You'll be all right, especially if you talk TV shows.
Everyone go make 7 Gmail accounts.
Thank you, Evie. When it gets to 2K in 12 years, I will definitely send you an invite. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. And thank you, Derry. Always enjoy you showing up for the chats. But yes, thank you guys for hanging out with us. I know everyone knows your channels, but go ahead and tell them anyway.
I'm the Fantasy Network. I also have a Song of Ice Fire podcast called Bend the Knee. We'll be covering House of the Dragon. You should check it out. And I also do Lost in Rush Hour, which is a Stormlight podcast, where half the audience hates me.
Are you still doing the manga channel too? Or is that?
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's there. I lost subscribers last month. That's how long it's been since I've done it.
Gotcha.
Maybe one day. I don't know.
And Chris, tell everyone where we can find you.
Yeah, I know my name because it's written on the bottom here, but it is Christopher Navo. So it's just the
Throw
name
back
of
to
the
earlier
website.
if you just tuned
Yeah.
in.
The handle is cnavo.thenextchapter. So and yeah, read a bunch of fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction, some manga, but not enough to make a second channel.
No. Yes. Spreading all the love for fantasy, Roman history, and my cat. Welcome to the Fantasy Watch. This is literally the channel. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for coming to hang out with us. What day of the week is it? It's Thursday. Jimmy, do you have a Chatting with Nuts coming up? Or no, because you had one last week, right?
No, I do not. I'll have it next week. Yep. Okay.
Well, you guys can check out Chatting with Nuts next week. All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you next time. Say goodbye. Cool.